Hey pals, welcome back to a new video. Today, we're going to be covering recording footage of your pixel art games. This includes stuff for like trailers, as well as recording GIFs that are like lossless, like really true pixel art quality GIFs with no compression, no dithering, anything like that. And we're mostly going to be focusing on Unity today, but if you use other engines, I think you'll get value out of it too. This is something that is really common when you're releasing games, when you're shipping a Steam page like I did recently for Insignia, as well as submitting for game jams and posting pages for your game there and clips on the game's page. This is of course very relevant for today's sponsor, Blue Ocean Games. Blue Ocean Games is hosting a pilot jam called the Rising Tide Challenge, where the winners are awarded sponsored prizes and an opportunity to pitch their game to an exclusive indie game fund. The jam begins on the 1st of May, that's really soon, and runs until the end of the month, where your submission will include a trailer of your game to be voted on by the public. There's some cool stuff going on here, including gift cards for the top 20 and a $1,000 gift card for the most voted on submission. You've also got the YouTuber Mix and Jam doing some guest judging, and this is also co-hosted by the Global Game Jam. So there's some awesome stuff going on. If you're interested, you should check it out at blueoceangames.com and sign up. And of course, if you make a pixel art game for the jam, you'll be using this video to help record your trailer and any other clips that you share online. So let's get straight into it. So if you do pixel art or make pixel art animations and GIFs, it's relatively straightforward to get your beautiful pixel art onto the web. It's pretty easy to press Ctrl-Alt-Shift-S in Aseprite and just export at like 400% and away you go. And if video was this easy for recording games, I wouldn't have to make this one. But it's a lot harder. And in my game Insignia, I've actually had a few different basically like little circumstances where I've needed to record clean footage out. Most of the time, if you're using Unity, you're going to be sitting here going, okay, I want this, right? And I would just want this in like a perfect video. And how do I do that? So there's a few steps that I guess I want to walk you through to make sure that you're in a place to get the most out of your video. The first thing is you want to be able to capture exactly what's here in a way that faithfully respects the pixel art. Now, there are practices, first out the gate is making sure that the pixel art looks good in the frame. So for that, of course, you want to make sure that when you're importing sprites, you want to make sure that you've got point filtering set in filter mode. And you want to make sure that this compression is set to none as the default setting. You've got different options for different platforms, but if you're not overriding, compression none and point filtering is going to get you most of the way there. If you use something like the Aseprite importer, that'll automatically do most of that for you. But if you're just importing PNGs, it's really important you do that. The next thing I would say is, of course, if you really care about Pixel Perfect, and I've made a video about why you might not care about it, if you do care, then make sure that your pixel art is being placed, in the grid and rendered either with a Pixel Perfect camera or placed somewhere that at least respects the pixel canvas, right? The pixel space. So there's an immediate little distinction here you have to make between recording 1080p footage of your game for like video versus recording the pixels as you would like them to be seen in a kind of like pixel art scenario. So in a GIF, the whole point of a GIF is they're not very well compressed, but in a way they're kind of lossless. For video particularly, you're thinking about YouTube and the fact that people aren't going to be watching at the exact, lossless quality, and the algorithms that do that compression do things to your pixel art that you may not want. So let's talk about video first. Now, for Unity, it's very difficult if you're not in a build to get a video capture of the editor. So you can get this extension called Full Screen Editor. It basically just lets you press, in my case, F10, and you're full screen, done. That's as good as, building the game and recording game footage. And I think having full screen in the editor is really important, especially if you're capturing things like trailer footage or screenshots, because, you can pause it and adjust things the way that you like them and then resume capturing or whatever you want to do. You might want to take multiple takes. And if the game is being affected by your play, like you kill an enemy, okay, now I need to record that enemy, so I have to reload the level. You don't want to have to do that. You want to just have as much control as possible over the environment, and doing that inside the editor is the easiest way to do that. So I totally recommend full screen editor. So from here, if you're just trying to capture video of your game, once you're in full screen or you're running a build of your game, is to record through OBS. That's my preference. I use OBS for everything. I use it for when I'm streaming. I'm recording this video right now in OBS, and it's free. So, free open source software, you can't go wrong with that. So OBS is just a normal application. When you install it, you get something that looks like this, and you'll have basically a bunch of options to add a ton of scenes and layers to those scenes and different components and stuff. If you're doing streaming, it's really useful to be able to do all that stuff. But for game capture, all you really need to do is set up a new source. We don't need this. And you either want to go for like window capture or display capture. Display capture is pretty straightforward. It's just pick a monitor, let it do what it wants. And then in this case, here's my monitor. There you go. There are some options here to capture the cursor. If your game, if you've got your mouse sitting on the screen, you might not want that in your gameplay capture footage, so you can turn it off there, and then you're ready to go. If you do pick window capture, then you'll have the option of selecting the window that you want. So you'll find Unity or whatever your game engine is, and it will capture the window there. You can toggle off again, capture the cursor, and that'll work just fine as well. And when you've got what you want to see showing up here, then you're going to hit record. But before that, you want to set up some settings. So let's talk through those first. The first thing you want to go is to output, not stream. And then I'm going to set this to advanced to get the full options. You're not streaming, we're recording here. Even though you see the bitrate settings, you don't want to look at that. And the two major components of any video are the format or the container and the codec or the encoder. So I usually just go for fragmented MP4 for when I'm streaming, because if the video cuts out, if I blue screen or something, fragmented MP4 will still be playable, whereas normal MP4 will not be playable if you get something corrupted along the way. Probably not a big deal for you if you're just recording, but it is what it is. Then we've got the encoders. So this is like how the video is going to be compressed and then unloaded when you're playing back the video. This is about file size and quality. So because I have an NVIDIA graphics card in my PC, basically when I'm recording the video, the graphics card will be doing the hard work here to do the recording and the compression as it goes into the container. So these are basically just options for allowing you to have more resources for Windows and your game while you're recording. Otherwise, you're going to be using a CPU-based encoder like X264 if you don't have an NVIDIA or an AMD graphics card. And what they do is basically, it just means that you're sharing resources on your CPU from like running Windows, running the game, and then you'll have your video encoder also sipping resources from that. So if you do have a graphics card and your game's not like fully GPU bound, then NVIDIA and NVENC is the way to go. Otherwise, X264. Audio, FFmpeg is fine. Just leave it as it is. It's not a big deal. So from here, you've got two major settings, which is going to control how big the file size is going to be and what the quality is going to look like. So these are from the encoder settings. They'll look different depending on which encoder you picked. So constant bit rate is just going to assign a certain amount of bits per frame for the whole video. And something as high as 10 or 12 or even higher, if you've got like a 3D game, for pixel art, 10 to 12 is fine, but higher for more complex like FPSs and stuff like that, where there's a lot of difference in the frame per frame. And then constant QP is not as easy to calculate how big the file size is going to be, because what it's trying to do is compare the frames and assign fewer bits where the frame difference is low. And for this, the constant QP is the number that you want to be changing to get higher quality. And you want that number lower if you want to have higher quality and bigger file size generally. So those will correlate, obviously. So 20 is like not great quality, pretty low file size. 15 is like decent quality, medium file size. And then like 10, 11, 12 is like great quality, high file size, but probably still lower than what you get out of a constant bit rate. So I would play around with constant QP for your game and start at 15 and go lower every recording and see how that looks for you. As far as resolution goes, I wouldn't bother with 4K even in 2025 for pixel art games. But if you really want to, you can. 60 FPS I think is much more valuable. So 1080p 60 I think is still a pretty good standard for most content, and most content is viewed on mobile devices. So in my opinion, 1080 60 is pretty good. But feel free if you want to do 4K for pixel art, that works too. Now, if you don't want to use OBS and you are in Unity, I would say another really viable option is to use the Unity recorder. This is recorder window. This appears, I think you might need to get the Unity package from the package manager. By default, I don't know if it's in there, but if you just type in record, yeah, there it is, recorder 4.3, you just hit install if you don't have that already from the Unity registry, and it'll appear in window. So window, general, recorder, and then click recorder window. This is actually pretty capable. So I think this is suitable for both video capture and GIF capture. It's actually crucial for the step I'm going to show you a bit later for capturing GIFs. The setup that I would use is to set the target FPS to 60. I would keep it at constant. I go 1080p, of course. The source, you can have like a render texture for this, but by default, it's easiest to just do the game view because that's how you're going to be recording it most of the time anyway. So that's just the default, just whatever's coming out of this. And it's going to treat it like it's in full screen. Even if it's not in full screen, it's going to understand that the thing getting rendered from the camera is a 1080p texture, and it's going to record that into your video. So Unity Media Encoder is pretty good for pixel art. And obviously I would pick MP4 because that's like the most common container, most supported by everything. H.264 is really, really common as a codec. So from there, I like to go custom encoding quality, and I set these pretty high. So like the default I think is 8. Go 12 for target bitrate or higher if you're really picky about it. And then the GOP size is by default, I think it's 25. I've got it down to 12 at the moment, and I got good results with this. So I set the encoding profile high. I didn't touch the B-frames. And then just recording this, I get something that's pretty good. Now, I had a bit of trouble recording audio with Fmod enabled. So I've got Fmod running right now, and it broke for me. But without the audio, just looking at the video recording, it's pretty good. So here we go, running around. Most codecs these days are like spatial. So they're trying to compare the previous frame to the next frame. So if you've got smooth movement left to right, that's usually the kind of like the best case. But let's try a big zoom out and see how that goes. Okay, running around. And we're back down. Let's stop recording now. I think it's looking pretty good. I would say as far as like color reproduction and preservation, it's basically spot on. Very few artifacts with the bit rate at 12. That's 12 megabits per second, I think is what that technically is. And really, really important is the file size is actually pretty small. So 37 megabytes is tiny for 30 seconds. That's a megabyte per second. 1.8, 2 gigs for half an hour is pretty good, actually. So if you don't want to use the full screen recorder and OBS, and you just want to use a native Unity solution, and you have the hardware resources to do it, again, hasn't worked for me in the past with lower powered machines. But yeah, it's totally a viable option, and the results are pretty good when you set them high enough. Now, the next thing that I want to show you is something that I've actually done a couple of times here in the Unity recorder for different reasons. One was actually to record footage for in-game. So in my game, I actually have little animation previews for when you unlock a new ability. It shows you how that ability works, and it shows a little image sequence of gameplay of the game. So I recorded that here, and I can show you how to do that. But the other thing that I've done is record footage for my Steam page. I've got little GIFs that play out of like little 2-second captures of the game through the body as you're scrolling through the page. And you can do this a couple of different ways. I'm going to show you the most sane way. If you go movie and then GIF encoder, it can also record GIFs too. What tends to happen is this is again a little bit heavy of a process. So if your computer's not amazing, it will play the game in slow motion when it does that. Don't worry. If it's not a bother for you, that's okay. So my game is designed to be played at 1080p with a scale of 3x. If you divide that by 3, that 1920 by 1080, you get 640 by 360. Now that's the like base resolution of Insignia. So here we have like an Aseprite file of essentially a perfect screenshot of Insignia, a pixel perfect screenshot where each pixel is a pixel that I drew in the art. You know, we're not at 1080p, we're at 360p. When you record in Unity, you can do that by changing the game view to that size. If you have a size that you've been working at, You should be thinking in this way anyway. So you've got your internal art resolution, and then you divide your 360, in this case, it's like 360p, divide it by 2. So now it's like 180. And then divide that by your pixels per unit of your art when you imported it in. In my case, it's 100. So you have a camera size of 1.8. Then every pixel will be 1 pixel. So there's my 1.8. And then, I'm running around, even in full screen. This is looking really nice and sharp. There are reasons why I don't play the game in 640 by 360, and it's mostly got to do with parallaxing, and I don't like the stuttering that it creates. But if you're trying to capture the game, especially for GIFs, then I can tolerate that. And then I would go to record a window. I can record the game view now because I'm using that resolution, and then just record this, okay? So if I start recording and, I'm starting to run around, what that ends up with when I finish recording is a GIF file of what I just recorded. Now, it's not looking great. It looks kind of blurry. It doesn't look great, and it's running really slow. Don't be worried by this. This is just Windows being silly and not knowing how to run GIFs correctly. To make sure, what you can do is take your GIF, and if you have Aseprite, literally drag the GIF into Aseprite. And when you do that, what you end up with is Aseprite will interpret the GIF as all of a series of images, and now you have your, full pixel per pixel perfect screen capture of your game in Aseprite. From here, you can do whatever you want and then re-export it as a GIF, and it'll be, fully lossless, no compression, no nothing. You just get this exactly as you see it as a GIF. So what you could do, for example, is what I did, which is take a crop of the game and use that on my Steam page. So in this case, I'm like grabbing this, taking this, and then pressing Sprite Crop. Now I've got that GIF at this, super wide, aspect ratio, and that can sit in the body of some page or something like that. And it looks great, looks perfect. No compression, no dithering. You don't get those, squares everywhere. It's just the game as you created it. I think it's really easy to miss this kind of thing. Like if you're making a game, you might just think about video formats and exporting videos, and GIFs, for pixel art are actually a super fair and accurate image containing format for animations that are perfectly viewable on the web and for sharing wherever you see GIFs. So, you can put them in Discord or whatever you want, and they'll play there too. You can, if you really want, you can do that Control-Alt-Shift-S, and you can export to a larger size. You can even press this export for Twitter, and Twitter has this weird bug in it where the last frame needs to be a little bit shorter because it hangs on the last frame for some reason. So you can do that. So there you go. You got your GIF captures, you got your video captures for trailers and whatnot, and you're ready to show the world your game. Now, the final thing that I didn't show you for recording in-game captures, which has the added benefit of allowing for transparency, is to record a PNG sequence. So for that, you need to record a new recorder. You need to go image sequence, and then not do movie this time. Then I would record my game view if I want all of it, but you can also, set up a new camera and record that camera's view at some region of the screen if you want. What I did here was make a square. So I had a special camera that's locked to the player's position that's just the size of like the surrounding area for them. I'm exporting at PNG, which allows for transparency, which is great. And then I'm just setting this to like, maybe 30 FPS for in-game recordings because I don't need that many. And then I'm just literally hitting start recording what I'm doing, jumping around. Again, this size here has no bearing on the actual recording. And when I stop, what happens is I get a ton of pictures out, basically. Now, this isn't that easy to see, but I've got my own in-game animation system that I call Retrobox, and that lets us view this quite easily. So this here is the video that I recorded a few months ago. It's literally just a series of PNGs, and it's going to run like this. So it shows just the player character, he's using an ability, lands on the ground, and I can play this at whatever frame rate I want. It's only going slow now because it's defaults to 10 FPS, but you can triple that and it'll play just fine. I mean, I use this animator for everything, but you can even use the Unity animator to do it too. You can just drag them into the animation timeline and it'll do the same thing. It's not particularly different from that. So here's what it looks like in the game. You can see here, and I can just change this to be whatever I want. I could make it an image, I could make it anything. So I'm really happy with it. That's PNG sequences also recorded through the Unity recorder. So there you have it. Those are my tips for recording game footage of your pixel art games from Unity to make GIFs and trailer clips and things like that. If you have other tips, things that worked for you or software that you like, then feel free, of course, to share them below. The more, the merrier, and I certainly don't have all of the answers on this stuff. And if you liked any of the footage of my game that you saw today in the video, then feel free, please, to head on over to Steam and wishlist Insignia. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.